Hello everyone. My name is Lauren Antone, and I'm the Senior Marketing and Events Coordinator at MAR, as well as the producer of our free webinar series. Our webinar today is Strategies for Helping Sellers with Proper Pricing. This webinar will cover tips on proper pricing so your client can get maximum value, like understanding how to use popular tools such as RPR. We will also identify the 3 different price ranges, how to look at pricing as if you're an appraiser, and more. After our live session, the webinar will be recorded and added to our website at marealtor.com. If you have any questions throughout the session, please type them in the bottom of your Q&A screen, and we will hold a Q&A afterward. Our presenter today is Nelson Zide. Nelson has been one of the top producing broker owners of the ERA system since 1980. He and his company have been in the top 10 companies in the ERA system for the past 15 years. This trailblazer is also an author of 2 books and mentors realtors all over the country and, of course, those in his office. He is a senior GRI instructor as well as a national speaker and trainer for over 25 years. Nelson has earned the following designations: CRB, CRS, GRI, PMN, SRES, and ABR.
Don't
Now,
forget the SOB, Lauren. SOB. Oh, no, that's the.
and
Sorry.
SRB. Now over to Nelson.
Oh, sorry. I did mean to say, Lauren, like a GSOB, which is the grandson of a broker.
Oh, I see.
SOB is a son of a broker. I'm the grandson of a broker. So, just as a cute sidelight, my grandmother was one of the first female licensees in the Commonwealth of Math in 1960, and I have a copy of her license. So just kind of an interesting little sidelight. So thank you very much for having me, Lauren. I really appreciate it. This morning, we're going to talk about some strategies for helping sellers with proper pricing. So as we all know, okay, that today's day and age, it's really hard to come up with proper pricing because no matter, we need to know this up front, especially when we're talking to our sellers, because no matter what price we put on almost any single family in our marketplace, it just seems like we get multiple offers when we put it on. It sells for more money, sometimes a lot more money. And then you get very, very happy sellers, very disappointed buyers, and obviously buyer agents and so forth. So I think it is even more critical as we are talking to our sellers these days to let them know how we are coming up with our pricing strategy to put their home on the market. We also need to let them know that no matter what we think, and some of the things we're going to talk about this morning will make a major effect on their sale of their house, but to make sure it actually closes, is that we have to have still a reasonable price. So let's just try to dive into this a little bit. When my seller calls me, a client calls me, he wants me to put his house on the market, and I'm doing some preliminary work before I physically see the house. And I do know during the pandemic, for some of us, it was very, very difficult to go see the house physically. If it was an older couple, it's really hard to even do a video tour because they don't know how to use the equipment. So, but you really do have to see the house, because no matter what you do to try to come up with a price, if you don't see the house, that may not be right. Because you don't know what the condition is. You don't know how everything is inside. Is it minty plushy? Is it a dog? And until you actually see the house, you don't know. But before I go in, here's some of the things that I really try to do. Is one, I do use RPR. If you're not using RPR, at least as a base, I think you're making a mistake. I think a lot of us that these days are using RPR. And one of the reasons that I use it, and I tell this to my clients, is that they don't know RPR, but it's a realtors only program. And it is more accurate than Zillow's estimate. Everybody knows Zillow's estimate, and they all think it's wonderful. Except if you read Zillow's homepage, even Zillow will tell you they're wrong 30% of the time, according to Zillow. RPR is wrong less. It is an informational program. They do take all the data, but it's really a good base for me to look at that house before I go and see it, to try to know what price range am I really going to talk to the seller about. So and I do take it with me, and whether you're doing a laptop presentation, whether you're doing a paper presentation, it doesn't really make any difference. It's what you're most comfortable with, and also what your client is most comfortable with. Some of us tend to forget that not all of our clients are very techy, and not all our clients are not very techy. So some people love the paper presentations. Others want to see it on an iPad. Others want to see it on a laptop. And it all depends upon your comfort zone as a realtor, but also your client's comfort zone. Just remember that one of the worst things you can do is have all your presentation on your iPad or laptop, and the seller doesn't have a clue of what you're doing. And if you don't think that they're out there, they are. Or if you do it all by paper and they look at you like you were born in the 30s, well, some of us maybe, but when you've already lost it before you went in. So this is one of the questions that you may want to ask the client before you meet with them is, what are you more comfortable with? Are you more comfortable when I talk to you doing things on an iPad or a laptop? You're more comfortable on paper? Let me know, because I want to be able to make you more comfortable when I go there. So let me go back to this RPR. That to me is my base. Now, hopefully you all know your marketplace that you're in. But in today's day and age of GPSs and tight inventory, a lot of us are going to a lot of different places that we may not know. I mean, hey, listen, I listed a house in Everett. I'm from Framingham. I don't know Everett from a hole in the wall, but my client is buying in Framingham and they wanted me to list their home. I did have to drive by the new casino before they opened, but I did. So I don't know. Now, RPR was a really good resource for me in order to try to get a base to work with before I go on to MLS. Okay, before I go on to MLS. And if my RPR says the house is worth $500,000, and if I know the market and I know they're wrong, well, look, I'll make some adjustments. If I know they're right, then at least gives me a base. So when I go onto my MLS and then I look at house price ranges, and this is number 4 with me, is a price range. I want to get my data in a price range. Now, the reason why I want to get a price range is because when I'm sitting down with that seller, I need to know, I said, look, I've done some preliminary work. I haven't seen your house yet, so obviously it's going to be subject to me seeing it. But I think your house may be as a low of 420 and a high of 6. Would you agree with me? Do you think you're in that range? Now, if the seller disagrees with me, I'm already in big trouble. I mean, I'm already. And I know what happened. Oh, my neighbor sold for $800,000. Well, if you've done your homework, you would probably know whether they did or they didn't, and how comparable is the neighbor's house to their house. And I do know the old Floyd Wickman saying, well, I have gold nails, gold-plated nails, and I get this and I get that. Well, some of it may help, but not all of it. So I want to go in with a price range of a low and a high just to see if I'm in the ball game with the seller's perspective. See, because if the seller's perspective is not my perspective, I'm fighting a losing battle. And I think that's really important for you folks to know. You don't want to go in and do a presentation and find out you're going to fight a losing battle because you think it's worth $450 and the seller thinks it's worth $6. No matter what you do, you've lost. So it's really important to be able to do that type of price range, because you need to have some agreement, same wavelength that the seller has. Now, it could be a broad one. You could be within 100, 150,000, but at least it's a broad range. Then we know we can attempt to narrow it, and we know we can try to get to a correct, hopefully a correct listing price for the property before we put it on the market. So you really got to know that price range is critical. And that's why I like RPR, because it gives me a really, really, really good base. Now, before I'm seeing the seller, because some of the things that we're going to talk about is what do we do when we're face-to-face with that seller, is I will pull comps. And I know that's what we all do. But I have to tell you, don't pull like 3 comps. I've seen this happen a lot. I've seen my own agents do it. I've seen other agents do it. There may be lots of comparable data and they pick 3. Well, when you're sitting down with the seller for the first time, you want to have as many different comps as possible. Okay, as many different comps as possible, because that's what the seller wants to see. How close is the comparable data to the seller's existing house? That's what you need to show them. If you're not going to show them that, then you've got a problem. I mean, to compare a colonial that's 8 rooms, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths to a ranch is not a comparable data. Okay, we're going to talk about what appraisers look for, because this is how I also talk to my seller. But I want to bring my comps for solds. Now, solds solds are homes that sold in the last 3 to 6 months, similar to what the houses I'm looking at. So if I have an 8-room, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath colonial, 2-car garage, half acre, that sold for $500,000, I want to see other colonials. A ranch doesn't work, a cape doesn't work, a split doesn't work. That's my first go. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, especially with limited inventory. As a matter of fact, stats just came out that February, the number of homes closed this February was down 14% from what it was before. And matter of fact, my wife read that and she said, how come it's down? Because there's no inventory. That's why it's not, you can't sell what's not there. So therefore, house sales are down. So you've got to look at comparable data. Now, sometimes you have to go beyond 6 months. Sometimes you have to go to a year. Sometimes you may have to go out of town. Now, I was helping my daughter on a refi, and she has a very unusual custom-built home in her town. A couple additions and a pool. There just weren't that many homes, and it's a split. There were colonials, but no splits. So I had to go to an abutting town to try to help the appraiser when he came in for the refi, to try to create the correct value for the house. I mean, our job as a realtor for that seller is try to get the correct value of that home. Now, I'm also going to look at pending sales. Very, very important for pending sales. Now, hopefully you have a good relationship with a lot of the good realtors in your marketplace, because they can't tell you what it's pending for because it's not closed. It's not actual data yet. But what I do, and I know I've used the word but a lot. I love the word but. Some people don't like the word but. I like to agree with everybody and then say, yeah, but, and then we go on to maybe a different perspective of it, a different perspective. So I'm going to call up all of those listing agents and I'm going to ask them. I'm going to say, look, I know you, and I preface this by saying, I know you cannot tell me what this house on 2 ABC Street sold for, but it was on for $450. I'm doing an analysis of another house in that neighborhood, and I just want to try to get some idea. Did it sell for full price? Did it sell for 20 grand over? Did it sell for 40 grand over? Did it sell for 60 grand over? 100 grand over? Which price category am I close to? Because if you found 3 pending sales and they all sold for 40 to 60 grand above asking, that asking price wasn't the right asking price. And all of a sudden in the next 2 months, you're going to find out that you were below what you should be because the last 4 pending sales sold for 40 grand more. Now, it's not an exact number. I know we're not an exact number, but it's close. You know, I don't want to put a house on the market for $499 if the last 3 or 4 pending sales similar to that home actually sold for $560, $570. I want to get that indication so that when I'm sitting down with that seller, that I'll know better how to present the data, because pending sales are really important in today's market. I mean, we all know you list the house on Thursday, first showings, Saturday and Sunday open house, or Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All offers due on Monday night, Tuesday afternoon. And we know that all of a sudden that you're going to find that there were 29 offers. 29 offers. Okay. We know that. So, and that's terrible as a buyer's agent. Great if you're the listing agent. But maybe that may have told you, maybe, not necessarily true, maybe that the list price you had was too low. Maybe. Not necessarily, but maybe. So I'm just trying to get some indications. It's not going to be an exact. No listing agent's going to tell me what the house sold for, because also you have to remember, it's not just price. And this also has to do with your sellers when you're talking to them. It's terms. Hey, if someone wants to pay my seller cash, no inspections, close in 3 weeks, and that suits my seller's needs, and less money than 1 or 2 other people, guess what? That's probably a better offer. I need to explain that to my sellers, that the highest price may not be the best price, because terms are critical in terms of pricing your home. Terms are very, very, very important. We're going to talk about terms shortly. So I'm not going to know an exact price for any pending sales. I just want to see if I can get a ballpark. And if they'll tell me, great. If they don't tell me, it's okay. And I understand. You know, not everybody will tell you. Some will, some won't. Depends on what relationships you have. And I don't want to know an exact, because they may have sold it for 20 grand above, but maybe the buyer waived home inspection. Maybe the buyer wanted all the furniture and the seller wanted to give it to him. I don't know. All those things do have a, something to do with your pricing of your new listing, something to do with it. I just want to try to get a ballpark, if at all possible. And the third thing, obviously, I look at, what are they competing with? And we now know in all of our marketplaces that there's not much inventory. And, if you're competing against one house, that may affect what my price range will be. If you are going to compete with 5 houses, my price range. We all are talking to sellers that are ready to list, not now, but maybe a month from now or 2 months from now. Or you're dealing with the states and you can't list it for another 1 or 2 months. I always tell my seller, I said, look, here's what I believe your price should be today. If we're going to go on the market another month or 2 months, subject to change. Because if 4 other homes came on the market for less money, I may change. If 4 other homes came on the market and they all went pending, for higher money, I may change. So I want to at least let you know that this is as we speak today, based upon the data that I have available today, in order to try to come up with a price. So now I'm sitting with the seller. And even before, I just have all my data with me. I'm just trying to tell you to collect all of your data. Okay, that's what I want to do. So you're somewhat prepared, hopefully very prepared, not just somewhat, but very prepared. So here's some of the conversation. Oh, by the way, one thing, you got to know your comps as much as possible. I mean, goodness, and you got to look at everything. I mean, you got to look at, style, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, land area, and neighborhoods. You look at neighborhoods. I mean, we all know in every single town, there are better neighborhoods than others. Really hard to compare a house that's not in a good neighborhood with a house in a good neighborhood. So you may want to use the house in a not as good neighborhood if you compare it with a better neighborhood, or vice versa. So all of these things you need to sort of like take in consideration And no. And if that also means if you're calling the listing agents on the sold houses, if you have some questions, you want to know, and you really want to read the listing. I know that's a novel approach. Novel. Read the listing of your comparables. Read the listing of your pendings. Read the listings of your currents. So you know as much as possible how they compare to the house you are looking at, because that's going to make a huge difference, I believe, in your pricing to make sure we're comparing, competing. We're comparing, that's the word, comparing apples to apples, not apples to pears. Apples to bananas is not a good comparison. So very, very important. So now I've got all this data. Now I am sitting down with my seller. So here's one of the some of the questions that I am going to have a discussion to help me in my pricing with the seller, okay, with the seller. So what I am going to do is I'm going to ask them, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what's your timing? How many times do we ask to have the seller? What is your timing? Because that's critical. You know, if the seller tells me, oh, I'm building a new home and I really want to wait 6 months, you know what? I may not want to put it on the market today because most buyers and lenders are not going to wait 6 months. Or, Mr. Seller, do you have a place to go? Is it better for you to sell now and maybe go on the higher end of the price range and know you got your money and you're gone, than waiting until you get closer to when you need to move? Or I got transferred and I have to move in 3 weeks. Well, guess what? If you've got to move in 3 weeks, that's going to affect the potential pricing of your home and how we're going to look at the pricing of your home. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what's your time frame? You'd be amazed how many of the agents in my own office and that I chat with all around the country who don't think about asking that. Well, because that's really important. Because I say, okay, we put your house on the market today. We get a buyer within a week. You have to be out in 44 days. And then they panic. They say, oh my God, where am I going to go? Well, that's a different story now. Unless you have extra room in your house and you want to put them up, I mean, that's up to you. But most of us do not want to put up our sellers. And a lot of our sellers don't want to go to a Home Suites hotel or a Marriott Suites hotel or something. You know, it all depends. So I want to have a discussion with the seller is, what is your timing? Now, I know in my area, we have a lot of over 55 units and a lot of new developments that are taking 4, 6, 8 months from now to close. I have one development, they were supposed to have closed last November. It's now April. It's now into March, not April yet. And we still haven't closed. You want to know how many of the sellers that we've had have been in hotels for 4, 5, 6 months? It's been brutal for those people. And they have no recourse. Unfortunately, no recourse. So what's the timing for the seller? So you need to have that type of discussion with your seller so you can try to determine what is the better price ranges that you want to put the house on the market based upon the timing of the seller. Okay, very, very important that you want to take care of that. I also want to talk to them is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, did you know that there are 3 price ranges you may want to consider? Now, most of my sellers look at me like I'm talking out of my lovely full head of hair. They say, what do you mean there's 3 price ranges? Well, there is wholesale. I can tell you wholesale is like the WeBuyUglyHouses.com people. It's like maybe your flippers that you have, or maybe like some of the iBuyers. They're not that popular out here in our marketplace right now. They were before the pandemic. Now they aren't, and they may come back. But basically, there are buyers out there who will offer you below market because it fits your timing, if that's what it does, just to get paid cash, get you out, and you're gone. Are there many sellers like that? Most of them aren't, but there are a few. I mean, we've all had a few of them, but I want to ask the question. I want to ask them, do you want a wholesale price? I can give you a wholesale price. Okay. B, do you want retail? Now, retail is where I've done all of my analysis, which I brought with me, and I've looked at what the retail prices are of other comparable houses in your marketplace. So we're looking at here, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you live in a lovely full shed Cape, 4 bedrooms, 2 up, 2 down, 2 bathrooms, 10,000 square feet in a nice neighborhood. Here are 4 other 4-bedroom, 2-bath Capes in our town, nice neighborhood, 10,000 square feet of land. Here they are, okay? And they all sold for between $450 to $500, $450 to $470. Here's what they sold for. And here's what the pending sales are. They were asking X dollars. Now, I don't know what they sold for, but in today's market, they may have sold for 20 to 30 grand above. Maybe. You don't know yet, maybe. So you are probably in that price range, and that is probably retail. And if you want to go into retail, you probably can get a buyer relatively quickly. Could be in 3 days in this marketplace. And then you're out. Or the last one is what my mentor and good friend Floyd Rickman says, you want the 3-year price. The 3-year price is the market says your house is worth $5, you want to get $650. Fine. Sign a 3-year listing contract. We'll go for $650 if that's what you want. Now, I know that's a little bit unrealistic. I know most people don't do that. Okay, but how often have you been face to face with your sellers? And they said, well, look, I don't agree. I know your spread was 450 to 6. You think it's worth about 525. I want 6. Well, how many of us would take the listing at 6? And then we have to explain to them what may, not what's going to happen, but what may happen down the road. And you better explain it to them. Because I know in today's day and age, there are very few price reductions. And there are some, believe me, I keep on seeing them. There are some. But you could say, look, if your timing suggests you have lots of time to sell, okay, and you're willing to wait just in case, you may not, because nobody knows, but you may, then, hey, we can put it on for $599 and let's see what happens. And we can try it for 2 or 3 weeks and let's see what happens. And if we get no showings, we get no offers, we get no activity, does that tell you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it's time for a price drop? You need to get agreement from them up front during your listing presentation. You need to get an agreement. As a matter of fact, if you've listed it very high, I'd even strongly suggest you get a price change form with you at the time of listing and say 3 weeks from now, 2 weeks from now, we're going to drop this $599 to $569, because that's where it should be. You agree with me? And by the way, if you want an agreement with anyone, shake your head this way. Yes. Great. Will you sign a price drop? Now, let's put it on so we don't have to waste our time. Now, do all of them do it? No. But I've had some do. And it may be worthwhile. And if they don't, maybe that's telling you they may not be realistic down the time. Of course, in today's marketplace, what's realistic pricing? That's our hardest job as a listing agent today. What is realistic pricing? Because no matter how good we thought we realistically priced that house, we sell it for 20, 30, 40 more. I mean, how often have you been? I lost out last weekend. Now, last week, this is March. House is on for 500. My buyer bid 500. He bid 560. He was outbid 60,000 above. Now, did I think the house was priced decent at 500? Yeah. And out of the about 10 offers, the listing agent told me, not one was at 500. Everyone was either 530 or 540 or 550, way up there. Now, did the listing agent misprice the house? I don't think so, because I looked at the comparable data, and that is probably where it should have been, except in a marketplace where there's no houses for sale at 500 in nice neighborhoods in that town. Maybe that's told you it is worthwhile to price it higher. And as long as you can explain that to the seller, that it may be worthwhile. May. I wish nobody knows 100%. One of my good friends always told me, you may know this, but there's only one thing that's 100% in real estate. Only one. And you can use this. The one thing that's 100% is when the property closes, it goes on record, buyers get the key, and I get paid as a realtor. That's 100%. Other than that, there's no 100%. So no matter how good we are in terms of coming up with the right data, with the right price range, with the right everything to explain to our seller clients that I really think you said you want above retail, well, fine. You want way above or just above? Well, in today's marketplace, we could go above retail because that's where the marketplace tends to be. Above retail tends to be. So you need to have that type of discussion. Now, one of the last things I do when I'm talking with my sellers, after we have all of this pricing discussion, and let me just add before I get to this part, is realistically, you want to do a really good listing presentation and to be able to sell the seller on everything that you're going to do for them, however you do your listing presentation, before you talk about pricing. I mean, just think about this. How often have you gone in and the first thing you did, open your mouth and we talked about pricing, and now you've lost because your competition have gone in and said, well, I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this, and boom, 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 boom. And then the seller says, oh my God, you do all these things? Yes. Well, what about my price? Well, I'll get there. But I do this and this and this and this. And I do this and this and this and this. And this is how I market your home. And this is how I represent you. And this is what I do. If you're not doing that first, you most likely will lose. And I know that because every time I break my own rule, that's my rule, is do a presentation first, look at the house, do a presentation, talk to them, find out what their wants are, what their needs are, what their timing is. Really important. I mean, I have a listing coming up where I said, you got a lot of stuff. You've been here 40 years. She said, yeah, we're going to be cleaning out. I'm moving out, in April. And when I move out and all my stuff is gone, that's when we're going to put the house on the market. I said, that's the right way to do it. So you don't have to be there. She's an older lady and you don't want to be here, certainly during this still the pandemic. And we want to be able to show it when nobody is here and nothing's in the house. Well, that's part of the presentation. Okay, part of the presentation. You need to have that type of discussion with your sellers so you know how you can price it. And then you need to have an agreement with them. I mean, how often have you done your work and all of a sudden you thought it was a beautiful house before you went in, it was a dog. And now all your data is too high. Or you went in and you didn't think it was that good. And all of a sudden, you didn't know they renovated it 3 years ago. And it was they got transfer. And they didn't want to sell. And you say, oh my God, this is gorgeous. So all your data may not be totally correct. It's not that it won't be correct, just not totally correct. So it's really important that you have these types of conversations with your seller when you're with them. and make sure you do your listing presentation, for them. This is not a course on listing presentation. This is a course on trying to come up with the right price, but it's really critical to have that done before you talk about price. Because once that seller knows everything that you're going to do, you have a better chance of having the seller agree with your price strategy in terms of what to put on the market for. And then you also can chat with them about what's going to happen. And you need to chat with them about that because they've all read about it. Say, look, we put it on for Thursday, no showings to open house on Saturday and Sunday. Don't be here. I'll be here Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 4. You tell them how you're going to do it by appointment only every 15 minutes. You don't even have to have an open house. There are a lot of what's happening now is listing agents are doing every 15-minute showings from 12 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, house seller went out. They don't need an open house, but they have showings. And I'd almost rather have it because then I know that people are coming with a realtor and that most likely they're all fully pre-approved. So all sorts of different ways you need to have that type of discussion. And if you're not, you're missing the boat because all of that type of discussion plays into the pricing strategy you're going to have with that particular seller. And by the way, is it that one seller? I hope you're having all decision makers there. I mean, if they're not there, ask them if you could do Zoom to do your presentation and your pricing strategy with the one physically there and the one not there, or FaceTime, or Microsoft Teams, or whatever system that you use. You want to make sure that they're all decision makers are there. You don't know how many times, excuse me, in my career, I thought all the decision makers are there, and they weren't. And I made a presentation, and someone else got it. Why? Because they did it to everybody, and I missed the boat. So now I asked that question: are all the decision makers going to be there? I need to know. So one of the last things I want to talk about in terms of pricing, and very few realtors use this, and I want to share it with everybody because I think it's important enough. I tell all my sellers, when I'm doing my pricing strategy, I really look at your house as if I am the bank appraiser. Now, a lot of times they don't know what that is. And I said, well, bank appraiser is a person hired by the buyer's lender to come out to the house after you sold it. And if you sold it for $500,000, they need to justify that $500,000 sales price to the bank. If they can justify it, our sale goes through. We don't have a problem. If they don't justify it, we may not have a sale. Oh, does that happen? Yes. As a matter of fact, in this marketplace, you all know we're having more and more and more fall throughs because the house doesn't appraise. Well, I want to have this discussion with the seller up front. When I am pricing your house, the reason I've done all of this comparable data work, all of this RPR work, Zillow's estimate work, all this stuff is because when I'm coming up with a price for your home, I'm looking at it as if I'm the bank appraiser. I'm your listing agent. I represent you. So I want to know, I'm the one who's going to meet the bank appraiser there. And by the way, as an aside, if you are a listing agent and you do not meet the bank appraiser at your listing, you are just asking for that sale to fall through. Asking for it. I know a lot of listing agents who just tell the appraiser, oh, there's a lockbox, go ahead. Wrong, please don't do that. Do your job. I can tell you, I have yet, I say yet just in case, yet to lose a house on a low appraisal. And I always go, always go to that bank appraiser because I want to bring them comparable data. I want to bring them all the information about the house. If there was a lot of upgrades, I want to get that list of upgrades from the seller. I want to show them. I want to show them all of the data. And I use a highly technical term. The technical term where I tell my seller this, highly technical term, is I schmooze the devil out of the appraiser. Schmooze the devil out of them. Now, does it work all the time? No. Houses, it works better. Condos are a little different story. I mean, if you sold a condo 50 grand above everything else in that condo complex, it's not going to appraise. I already know that. But you can sell a house at 20, 30, 40 grand above, and it may appraise. The other thing I want to tell my seller, when I meet the bank appraiser, and I will meet that bank appraiser, they will not be there without me. I point out all the improvements. I point out all the good stuff. I bring the data with me. I want to share the data with the appraiser. Now, does the appraiser have to use the data? No. The good ones do. The lousy ones don't. I can tell you all the good appraisers I know really appreciate the fact that I have brought them data to help them come up with the value of the house. I have come up with improvements to help them come up with value of the house. And I will point out, well, this one was maybe 8 months, not 6 months. And this one had this, and this one had this. I want to point out similar land area, but and they also want to bracket. Appraisers want to bracket the house. So if you sold for 5, I got to show them one below 5, but I also want to show them a whole bunch above 5. So they want to bracket. So I want to show them that one below. Okay, just to show them, and I point out why. Less land, one less bedroom, less bathroom. Oh, yeah. I circle them on the listing so they can see it. And when I show them the ones above, hey, I want to say, look at this. My house had 4 bedrooms. My 2 or 3 comps had 3. Mine had 2.5 baths. This one only had 1.5 or 2 bathrooms. Whatever the case may be. So I want to be there. And I tell this to the seller because when I'm looking at their price, I am looking at their price as if I am the bank appraiser because I have to be there and justify the price. Really, really, really critical. Now, after I say that to my seller, I always ask him, if you've had any other realtors here? Yes. Anyone ever say that? No. Well, how are they going to help justify your price? How are they going to help get the appraiser to say your house is worth $525,000 if they're not going to be there? Or if they're not acting like an appraiser? Or if they're not looking at your house as if they're an appraiser? Now, I'm not a licensed appraiser, but I've done this enough. I've done enough closings that I want to look at the house. So as if I am the appraiser, so I can justify your sales price as much as possible to the appraiser. That also may mean, Mr. Seller, we may look at multiple offers. And not all offers are the same. And not always is the highest offer the best. And I have to have that. And this is the pricing strategy that, hey, we get 3 offers, 5 offers. And one is 30,000 above, but they're putting 5% as a down payment. Versus one is 25,000 above and they're putting 30% as a down payment. That 5% below price, it wasn't the highest price, may be a better deal. Maybe, not necessarily, maybe. There are other factors that go into the taking whatever the best offer for you is, Mr. Seller. But the pricing strategy we use to put it on the market, the pricing strategy of looking at your house like I'm an appraiser, looking at all the data, give me a whole list of all the upgrades you've done. I want that list, Mr. Seller. Give it to me. That's going to help me sell the house at this price and also going to help me justify it to a bank appraiser, especially if you want above retail, which today, what the devil is above retail? Everything is selling above retail, it seems like. So I have gone over the 6 things that I think are really important in terms of attempting to come up with the right price for your seller. It does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of research. And you've got to know. You got to know, even if you're going to a marketplace that you're not that familiar with, you still got to feel comfortable. One of the other things I do if I'm going to a marketplace I'm not that familiar with, I call a friend of mine in the marketplace. If I know I'm going to list a house, I'm going to call him. You know, I'm going to say, hey, what about the neighborhood of 3 ABC Street? You know, I've got a 9-room, 5-bedroom, 2-bath, antique colonial on 5,000 square foot lot in this neighborhood. Do you think it's in the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 range? I don't know. Just to get some better idea. So again, when I sit with that seller, I'm using all of this information. Some of it may be anecdotal, but all of this information to try to come up with the best list price I possibly can. So now I'm ready to take a deep breath, Lauren. And I think I've covered everything in terms of trying to get the best price. I have noticed there have been a few questions, so I'm going to now turn it back to you, Lauren, to let me know what some of those questions are. And if anyone else has questions, please put it in the chat so Lauren can get them and we can talk about them and I'll try to answer them.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Nelson. And
Welcome.
as you've said, if you have any questions, now's the time to write them in your chat box. We have a couple of questions already.
Oh, good.
The first question is there a rule or regulation by MAR or NAR that does not allow a listing agent to tell me how much a property they listed sold for?
Well, legally, they cannot tell you what it sold for until it closes. Legally, they cannot tell you. And when I asked the question, and it's not from our MAR or NAR, I think it's a legal contract basis that it's not a correct price until it actually closes. So when I call these agents on pending sales, I tell them up front, I do not want to know what it sold for. I don't want to know an exact price because I also know there's other terms that could make a difference. I want to get a range. Did it sell for 20 grand above, 30 grand above, 50 grand above? Just give me, I don't want an exact, just an approximate, okay? An approximate. Because I do think, now I'm not a lawyer, but I do think it's illegal to tell people what something sold for until it actually closes. Then it's on record and it's legal. So I don't want to know because also we don't know if it's actually going to close. What happens if the buyer backs out? What happens if the seller backs out? What happens if it doesn't appraise? What if it doesn't close? What if there's a title problem? We just don't know. Okay. I mean, I have one house now. It's been pending for almost 6 months because the seller didn't do his probate correctly. Now, my buyer's in there renting and he's locked at a good price. So, and he's at a cheap rent, but he would like to close. So you don't know. And if anyone calls, if anyone asks me what that sold for, because they see my company's name, I said, I can't tell you. It was listed for X. I can't tell you. It's not sold, not closed. And I can't tell you if it's sold above, below. I really can't tell you. And you know what? I get that most of the time, which is okay. But some agents, I want to say, oh, it sold for a minimum of 30 grand above. Hey, if they can tell me something in generalities that may help me, it's worthwhile asking. At worst case, they say, I can't tell you, and I appreciate that, and I respect it.
So
Next question.
Charles has a follow-up question in chat.
Yes.
What legal regulation is it exactly?
I knew that. I saw that. I knew he was asking that. I don't know off the top of my head. I've just been trained that until a house closes, you cannot tell anybody what it's sold for because it's not actually closed. It could have appraised. It could have, you have your P&S. Buyer may have his bank commitment, but until it actually goes on record, it is not public knowledge. So I am not 100% sure what the legality of is. You may have to ask your local attorney, but I do know it's not legal to tell anybody exactly what it's sold for because we don't know. Again, what were the terms? What did they want to leave, not leave? What was the whole situation? There's all these other factors that come in, not just price. Now, when I'm trying to get an idea of a price range for a new seller, I'm just trying to get an indication. So I don't want to know exactly either. So I don't want to put the listing agent under any type of issue that could be a problem. Next, Lauren.
So the next question is, this person is asking, so they present their pricing to the seller with third-party data, and they're wondering if you agree or disagree with this strategy. They said that they include Mr. Real Estate Estimate, Realtor's Property Real Source Estimate, Redfin, and Zillow Estimate.
I mean, I will try to bring all of them with me if I think they're all accurate. And I will explain to the seller that Zillow's estimate, RPR, Redfin's estimates, all of these artificial intelligence estimates are just that, artificial intelligence, not necessarily 100% accurate. Matter of fact, a lot of them aren't. Even according to Zillow, they say they aren't 100% accurate. All they do, though, is give me a basis. So if all these four estimates are all around 420 to 460, well, that may give me a basis to chat with the seller about a pricing strategy, because here's the basis. But now let me look at the actual factual data. Here's the comps. Here's the pendings. I mean, Zillow and RPR and Redfin don't talk about pendings in their estimates either, because they don't know. But that may tell me something. And if a house is pending, you know, after 2 or 3 days, probably went for higher than asking. Probably. We don't know. So I will use it, but I couch my remarks just to make sure that they are not really accurate, you know, because even they say they're not really accurate. They're accurate as best as possible. Hopefully that answers that question.
So the next question is, would you do your listing presentation at the first visit to the house after you have toured it? That would eliminate the need to do it when you talk to them about pricing and eliminate the suspense the seller is feeling before you tell them what you estimate the value. Or do you recommend telling them what you offer at the time you sit with them to discuss pricing?
I am a huge fan of a one-stop listing presentation. Huge. I do not want to come back. Now, there are times I've had to, but if I've done all of my homework before I meet with them for that one-stop listing presentation, you know, and I even will look up the listing when they bought it. A lot of times you can go back in MLS to look up the listing when they bought it, so you get some indication there as well. I want to hit them with everything on the one time. Basically, I think I only have one shot of getting that listing. Whether I know them or don't know them, I have one shot. So I want to give everything my best in that one shot. So I am a one-stop listing presentation person, even without seeing the house first. Now, does that mean I'm always going to be accurate in my data? No. Have I looked at all the data? And all of a sudden I go in, and I mentioned this earlier, and 3 years ago, they gutted the house and redid it, and I didn't know. Or they became a hoarder, and I didn't know that either. So yes, we may have to be quick on my feet. And now that's an oxymoron for Nelson, because I'm old and I'm not quick on my feet anymore, but you got to be quick on your feet. So sometimes you may have to come back, and sometimes all the data I pulled wasn't close. And I'll explain to them because I hadn't seen it. But I would tell you a good 80–90% of the time, I'd rather do a one-stop, and most of the time, most of my data will be reasonably accurate that I can be comfortable with in explaining the pricing strategy with that seller on that one-stop, even though I had not seen the house before. It depends how comfortable you are. I will tell you, if you're not comfortable in doing that, then you have to tell them up front, I do a two-stop. I come in, I take all my notes, I look at everything, I try to find out your time frame, you know, I ask you some questions, and then I'm going to make another time with you to come back and give you all of my presentation, give you all my data, go over all of my pricing strategies. If that's your most comfortable, fine. But I can tell you, people who do two stops don't get as many as people who do one stops in general.
So the next question is, I'm pricing a property and I had a bunch of comps that were around the same range and then one that closed much higher. Now her client is now looking to list it higher. Can one higher closing price elevate the listing price? And would that be enough to appraise it out?
The answer, well, you asked two questions. One, could that higher price be an accurate, if that's the most recent one, that could be the most accurate one. I mean, as much as the other comps are saying 450 and this one comp says 480, you know, tough to say, but hey, that sold for 480. It is factual data. It is a comp. And if your house that you're looking at, as much as you could tell, is comparable to the house that sold for 480, based upon the MLS listing description, maybe based upon the pictures, it could be. And you have to tell them it may be a little harder to get, but if it closed, we can really try to go and let's put it on for 485 and let's see what happens. It may be worth your while to give it a shot, okay, to do the higher price, because we do have some factual data. Not a lot, but we have some. And again, in this crazy market, you know, there are going to be houses that listed for 5, sold at 6, listed 5, sold at 570. I mean, you're going to have some of those, but you got to be real careful with what's in that house compared to what's in your house. Hey, if that has new kitchen, granite, new floors, new rugs, new this, this, and yours doesn't, that's a good reason. Maybe check the listing to see what was attached if they had a list of upgrades, because that could be a big difference too. But yes, it's a good possibility. Next question.
Do you believe in pre-listing packages? If so, when do you give it to the seller?
That's a really good question. I do not do it. I have to be honest with you. I do not do it. I've talked to a lot of my friends around the country who do it, who are very successful with it. And they think it does a great job for them and make it a lot easier for them when they're sitting down with their seller, because in essence, now you've done your listing presentation prior to meeting them, which I think is a great opportunity if you have a great listing package or pre-listing package. I haven't just got around to it, and that's more me and my mental block. If you're using it, I would absolutely continue to use it if you're having success with it. Now, if you're not having success with it, either you're going to change what your listing package is, relook at it, maybe Google. I love Google. Google pre-listing packages. There's all sorts of trainers who do pre-listing packages classes just to see what's out there. So I have not done that, and I've been successful without it, but I know agents who have done it who are very successful as well. Also depends upon your market. If you're on Cape Cod and in your marketplace is a lot of investors, not non-owner occupants, I think a pre-listing, or the Berkshires, I think a pre-listing package is great because those people you're never going to be face-to-face with. So send them your pre-listing package and then do your listing presentation by Zoom. And I think that would be a really good, but if you're in a local marketplace, maybe not, whatever fits your needs. Next, Lauren.
Do you, as the listing agent, ever add this to your listing? Offer is not contingent on property appraising at purchase price. Should the appraisal come in below purchase price, buyer agrees to increase down payment to satisfy lender.
I haven't seen that on a listing, but I have seen that on offers. Okay, I've seen that on offers where buyers have come in and they've said the buyer agrees to make up the difference in cash between the purchase price and the appraised price. So I've seen that on offers. I have not seen that listing yet, that language on listing agreements yet. It's a very interesting language. I don't know if I want to put it in because I think that may scare a buyer or a buyer's agent when they're saying, oh, the listing agent is now telling me the house may not appraise at the listing price, not at a purchase price, but a listing price. So it's an interesting comment. I don't know if I'd put it on my listing, but certainly on an offer to purchase, if you're fighting with all these other people and your buyer has the extra cash, certainly is a good offer benefit to try to show the seller and the listing agent that your buyer is willing to make up the difference just in case. So kind of interesting. Next.
So, can you explain how you would list a home with a contingency of finding suitable housing? Timeframes, for example.
Yeah. Well, most listing agents do not put a time frame in. They've been putting in subject to seller finding suitable housing, and they leave it blank after that. I have a difficult time with that. When I'm talking to my sellers, I tell them if we need to buy a house, we are going to put in subject to seller finding suitable housing within 2 weeks of offer acceptance. So I'm letting all the buyer world know you're going to have to give my seller 2 weeks to find a house. Now, is that reasonable sometimes? No. I've had a couple sellers that their sales have fallen through because they couldn't find another house. And they just couldn't afford to buy without selling. But leaving it open like that is fine. I've seen that a lot. Just be prepared that when the buyer comes in, their buyer's agent's probably going to put a time frame on it. They very rarely are going to leave it so open, because if they leave it open, the buyer does a home inspection, buyer does an appraisal. 2 days before closing, the seller says, "Oh, I haven't found a home." Well, there goes your deal. So, and I don't think lawyers or good listing agents will let it go that long anyways, but just so you know, I've seen it there. You got to cover your seller. I would like to put in a time frame. If 2 weeks is too short, put a month. If the buyers out there won't wait, they won't. But you know what? Because we're in such a tight listing market, I think there were buyers who would wait a month before you find a home and sign a contract. I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I think. So next one, Lauren.
If sellers still want to list a ridiculously high price after given all the comps and after you've tried reasoning with them, would you still take the listing knowing it might make you look bad? Either it sells close to the price or else the listing sits on the market or needs a price reduction.
Well, one, I don't really care if it makes me look bad. I look gorgeous anyways, Lauren. So what's the difference? I don't care if it makes me look bad. I think it's a personal decision for you as a realtor. I mean, if they are so way above, if they want to give you a 3-year price, guess what? Sign a 3-year contract. They'll sign a 3-year listing contract, which they won't. Then you can say, well, look, you want a 3-year price. I want a 3-year contract. You want to sell your house, then we have to look at it. Now, if they don't want to be reasonable and you want to say, look, I just really think that this is way, way, way above. I just don't think I can do the job for you. There's nothing wrong with say, thank you very much, pack your bags and leave. If they stop you, which 50 or 60% will, you'll probably get it at a better price. If they don't, you know what? You may not have lost anything. And who knows whether they'll ever sell. Or they listen to another agent and maybe they came to their senses and another agent got them a lower price. I think it all depends. There is no right or wrong answer. It's how comfortable you are taking that very high price. That's what you got to look at. How comfortable are you? And you may even use the price drop form at time of listing. You think it's only worth $520? They want to list at $600? Fine, I'll list it for 3 weeks or a month at $600. I want you to sign a price drop form to $550 now. But it's not going to be dated for another month from now. So we're going to try it for $600 for 1 month. I'll do everything I can. And if we don't get offers, in 30 days from now, we're going to do a price drop. And someone just asked where you get. I think there's a price drop form in the MA forms. I think there's a form for that. I think my office always had a price drop form. When you get a price drop, you're supposed to get it in writing from the seller. So I think there's a form, and I think MA has a form for that, I think. Lauren may know better, hopefully. Maybe not, but I think there is.
I'm not quite sure. We have all of our forms through Zip Logic and Dot Loops. That's more of a question for them.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would definitely check that out.
Okay. I've seen it, so that's all I know.
So the next question is, are you seeing more agreements to lease to seller? Are you seeing more agreements to lease to seller the house for 3 months while seller completes building a house somewhere, or to find a house, especially in this low inventory market?
You mean your seller? What I don't understand the question, but Do they mean by the seller leasing a house for 3 or 4 months? I'm not quite sure. Maybe they can explain it better because I'm not quite sure of the question. So Lauren, let me go to the next question and maybe they can explain a little better because I'm not quite sure what they're asking. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Chris, if you want to send a follow-up to that question so we can answer that. So far, that's actually the last question that we
Oh,
have.
okay. Okay. I mean, and I will tell everyone, Lauren, if everyone wants, they can always try to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to chat with anybody. You can always reach me. May I give them my phone number here?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I did want to make sure I'm correct. But
Yeah.
you can always call me at 508-277-7794 or text me there. And then I'll be more than happy to try to answer any and all questions. And really at any time. That's what we are here for, is to help each other. So if I can help you at any time, please do not hesitate to let me know. And and the email address is Nelson. I have a hard one. It is Nelson, Nelson, at Nelson, Nelson, Zide, my last name, Zide, Zide.com. So it's Nelson at nelsonzide.com is my email address. And I thank everybody. And Lauren, thank you.
You're very welcome. I just sent your phone number and email.
By the way, the phone number, Lauren, is 277, not 3, 277.
Oh, okay.
I just saw it, 277.
Hold on, guys.
Anyone who's 377 is now going to get all these calls. They won't know. It's 277. Okay.
Update. Okay, I just sent the correct phone number
Thank
and
you.
email address.
And that's the right email too. That's the right email.
Okay, good. And I can even send that in like a follow-up with the
Terrific.
link to the recording of this.
Terrific.
Okay, well, that looks like all the questions for today. As a reminder to everyone, this webinar has been recorded and it'll be available to view in the next few days on our website at marealtor.com. Thank you so much, Nelson, for your presentation. It was super informative. And thank you to everyone for joining today. We hope to see you next time.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. Have a great day.